Happy Tuesday, everybody. My name is Andy Elliott. I'm a realtor here in Williamson County, Tennessee, and I'm with my best bud, Rodney Wilds, who's a loan officer with First Bank, also in Williamson County, Tennessee. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic. Couldn't be
What's
better.
anything any golfing recently?
Played a little bit this weekend. Didn't play Sunday. We had that crazy storm come through, and Sunday, I don't know, there was 30, 40 mile an hour winds all day. So
Yeah.
I stayed home, did some family stuff. So
Well, nice. That's not, I tell you, this is the time of year for anybody that's not in Middle Tennessee. This is the glorious time of year, man. It's cool, but it's warm and it's got breeze, fresh air, and I mean, man, it's awesome. It's I love this time of year. So,
yeah,
real
we get
estate.
two, we get 2 weeks of spring and 2 weeks of fall.
That's right. And then next thing you know, it'll be 12 degrees for a minute, good Lord. So, I guess, here's what we do. The whole goal of this show is to help buyers and sellers get smarter, faster in real estate, just using the tools we have and insights that we have, AI and that kind of different stuff. Um, People can take advantage of it. That's what we're about. And today's show, what it's going to be is we've got the inventory is super low. And how do we get here? And I understand, and tell me if I'm wrong, Ronnie, that the main thrust in most headlines about real estate is, oh, the prices are high, the rates are high, there's whatever. It's always price-based stuff. Week in, week out, we could always say the same thing, wow, the prices are still high, and look at those rates. They're still high. This week is going to be a little different, meaning I wanted to take a dive into what's happening behind the scenes. Why is this happening? Does that make sense, Rodney?
It does.
So let's this I'm going to jump right into it, and we're going to start this way. There we go. Look at that. This is actually an article that I caught with J.P. Morgan, and it's of course they're about investments and stuff like that. What I thought was interesting is the main thrust of this particular article was what's going on with housing, because wealth management, they're dealing with housing because it's an important topic. It's simple as that. And that's why I thought this would be an interesting topic for the day. So if you're okay with that, Rodney, I'll kind of jump in here.
Just
Um,
take a second to acknowledge Miss Ann. She jumped in the chat. Good morning.
Angie, what are you, Miss California girl? I got to get the Beach Boys in here for play a song. Good morning, my friend. Glad you're here. Super glad you're here. This article is a shortage of supply, the housing market explained, and I thought this was pretty good. And the next article after Rodney's riff, there's going to be a punchline that when I read it, I really didn't expect. And I look forward to getting a little off the top for Rodney on that. So here we go. If buyers are on the sidelines, why aren't home prices falling? That's a good question. It's a top of mind question, and for good reason. The U.S. housing market is sending mixed signals. Few people are buying homes, yet prices remain stubbornly high. And I'm going to say this again. I'm going to keep giving a status on housing price cuts. It's kind of amazing. And I'll get to that in a second. So the heart of the housing market resilience isn't surging demand, it's a shortage of supply. Rodney, you've been saying that for coming up on 2 years, I think. After 2 years of elevated mortgage rates, buyers have largely been on pause. Pending home sales, a key forward-looking indicator, have rebounded from their 2024 lows, with August posting a 4% monthly increase in pendings, September showing an even larger gain. But context matters. These upticks come off multi-decade lows, and overall activity remains well below the pandemic era boom. There's a good example, and that explanation is when people look at month-to-month comparisons and things are growing, you go, oh, things are looking good. But you look at year over year, and you can see quite a disparity. Does that make sense, Rodney? How you can make those comparisons?
Yes.
And so mortgage rates have eased. What is the mortgage? Did you even notice what the mortgage rate is today? I haven't even looked.
I did one yesterday. I had 599 on there, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Is that right? Look
Yeah.
at that. We're below
Yeah.
6. That's yeah, and look at that. The one the metric I go by is 617. That's way low compared to what I'm usually seeing 637 and stuff like that. Mortgage rates have eased into the low 6% range. There's your confirmation. The lowest in about a year, but affordability is still a major hurdle. As of early 2025, prices are up 60%, 60% nationwide since 2019 and still rising at a rate of 3.9% year over year, that's going up a little faster than Zillow and some of those guys are predicting. According to the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller U.S. National Home Price Index, just a reminder, Case-Shiller measures only homes that have been bought and sold before. There's no new real estate in that. Even with rates off their highs, the monthly payments for medium-priced homes is still out of reach for many households. For context, before the pandemic, the median home price, get this is, and we lived through this just recently. The median home price before COVID was $260,000 with the average 30-year mortgage rate of 3.8. That's wow, resulting in a monthly payment of roughly about $1,000. Today, the median price has climbed to around 420, and that's down a little bit. And rates are close to 6.4, call it 6.13, less than 6 with Rodney's testimony there. Pushing the monthly payment to $2,100. In other words, buying a typical home now costs more than twice as much per month as it did before the pandemic. Now, with those kinds of numbers, Rodney, do you see this slowdown in buyer interest and movement? Any surprise at all? What's your take on that?
No, I actually don't see it as a. I think one, the elevated rates and obviously the home prices have kept people on the sidelines, and now I'm not surprised at all because it's not like it got slow or something. It's the market's been down. The only thing I'm trying to grasp in this article, and I wanted to go all the way through it, and it's I don't think it's a shortage of supply. It's but don't we have plenty of supply? Like, isn't now I know there's the supply of buyers. There's a shortage of supply of buyers, but I thought the listings and the homes were where we could still get, negotiate and get a fair deal for a client, right? For a buyer right now.
I think that's probably the case, but when you look at the current just like this next slide is coming up, the current housing shortage of 2.8 million, and I think that what you're talking about and trying to what's the word, rationalize, is that a fair word? It's that month over month stuff versus year over year, because if you look long term, the number of listings on the market is desperately low compared to, it used to be like 5.4, it's crazy numbers, and now it's in the 3.9, something like that. And so you make a good point. So let's push through this and see if this doesn't clear it up, or maybe we could just declare these guys crazy. It's just JP Morgan, they're idiots, you know what I mean? So with demand so subdued, why aren't prices correcting? Isn't that the question?
Yes.
The answer lies in a persistent supply squeeze. About half of current U.S. mortgage here it comes. About half of current U.S. mortgage borrowers are still enjoying sub 4% rates, and about 80% are paying under 6%, creating a locked-in effect. We've heard that forever now. There's a little incentive to sell and take on a higher payment, keeping existing home inventory at historic lows. We estimate the current housing shortage at approximately 2.8 million units and believe it could take 10 years to resolve. 10 years. So, they're sticking to it. This figure is likely conservative and it only reflects the physical shortfall and doesn't account for the fact that many households haven't been formed due to discouragement. That's an interesting, we ran into this a couple of months ago. Households being formed, such as individuals remaining in their parents' homes longer. It's important to note that the shortage isn't uniform across the country, and it's most acute in coastal cities and much less severe in the middle of America. That's an interesting thing. So you remember we were talking about that households being formed when you don't have readily available properties, meaning 260,000 versus 460, very low mortgage. See, that's me too. And I'm so locked in. I am locked in. But it's just interesting that long term that you have fewer households being formed.
Yeah, out of discouragement. Yeah.
And I keep forgetting, the job of real estate professional is to find the highest and best use of the land. That's just what it is. But when you have this kind of difficulty where people don't want to spend that kind of money or don't have it or have to save up forever to make it, whatever the case is, and then you put off that family formation, God, that starts changing the metrics, because if you don't form a family now, that means that there's not going to be a family that needs to upgrade in 4 or 5 years. That's a slippery slope, if you ask me. So to finish this, compounding this is a legacy of underbuilding, especially in the years following the global financial crisis. The U.S. has faced a structural housing deficit. Oh, that was funny. For over a decade. While new construction has picked up, it's not enough to close the gap. Even as supply is starting to outpace demand at the margin, the backlog is so large that it'll take years to unwind. The result, a market where scarcity, not exuberance, is keeping prices elevated. Isn't that interesting? While it's true that easing rates can help the margin, they're not the game changer. Now, that I think you were kind of talking about that too, right? Rates isn't the only thing needed to have the market change dramatically. Is that right in your view?
Yeah. Um, yes, there could be several things, but I mean, if rates drop down to, again, crazy good levels, we'll cram that 10 years into a year. That's how the market works. It's not like it's going to be spread out. It's going to everybody's going to do it at the same, now, like we've talked about a lot, is the golden handcuffs people, everybody that has a low rate. And, like moving around here used to be, hey, I wanted to move down the street because I like that house better. I like that yard better. It's just still in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's just gone away. Like that just doesn't happen a lot. And that was a lot of our community, our moving around and things like that. So yeah, rates, and when rates get better, I think a lot of people are going to get off that fence and start moving down the street again, because again, their house is going to it's the same percentage, like their house is worth more and they'll be paying more for a new one. So I think that's going to definitely get a lot of people off the fence as the rate starts ticking down below 6%.
Yeah, that's what those kinds of moves I used to call them recreational moves, because people don't really have to. It's not because they're
Right.
forced to, but they want to get a farm style home instead of whatever they got. So you're absolutely correct. That recreational moving, I think, has not been eliminated, but it's been knocked down quite a bit. So just to finish up, as rates have started to dip, we've seen a modest uptick in contract activity. But unless rates fall dramatically, affordability will likely remain a challenge for most buyers. Couldn't agree more. There's also the paradox of lower rates. And Roddy, you've been preaching this for quite a while, and you couldn't be more right. If rates were to plunge in the absence of a recession, that was well written, it could actually reignite demand and push prices even higher. I mean, as more buyers chase limited inventory, in other words, lower rates might not improve affordability. They could create bidding wars. You've been talking about that forever. I'm hoping if that stuff ever happens again in the near future, that for the realtors that are out there and for the people that are getting ready to do that, that they are reminded of what just happened. You know, don't wait a minute. Let me tell you a story about $50,000 over ask. They're sad now. But anyway, but we still see an opportunity, and this is coming from an investor's kind of a perspective. All of this sets the stage for what we see as the most attractive opportunity in U.S. housing, the rental market. Now, we're not about rentals, really. That's not what this show's about. However, they're making a point. Today, the cost of owning a home is roughly 40% higher than renting. Man, oh man, I don't know if I agree with that yet. We'll get to that. And the average American needs more than 8 years to save for a down payment. I don't know how they come up with that. Both of which drive a preference for renting, with median apartment rents relative to median weekly wages now falling below where they were pre-pandemic. So, final thought. Is declining home ownership concerning? Some of the world's wealthiest countries have lower rates of home ownership, suggesting that home ownership isn't a prerequisite for economic prosperity. Now, these are investors talking about this stuff now. And the final thought I had is, while home ownership has traditionally been viewed as a cornerstone of wealth building, it is for a lot of people, history tells a different story. Over the past 15 years, U.S. house prices have consistently lagged the equity market, making housing a relatively inefficient way to build wealth compared to other investments. I'll interject into that before I throw it to you. I think that last sentence is directed mainly to investors, because for most Americans, I'm quite certain that most of their wealth is built through real estate if you're not active in the equities market. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 1,000,000%. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
it, yeah, I'm definitely concerned about, the younger generation. I think the idea of owning a home, for maybe my generation and some younger, it was, I don't know, I guess it was just ingrained. It was just something I wanted to do. It was like that was how, and I remember a huge sense of community when I bought a house and was living there. I was like, man, this is my house, this is my neighborhood. It's so yeah. If renting, um, but see, the thing is, I don't see, your housing expense is the first, in my opinion, before you need a portfolio, because you got to protect about rising rents. I mean, how else are you going to protect against, a $6,000 rent in 5 years? That's the thing I think is most important. And I'm just thinking long term investment. If you just buy that house, you're going to work for 30 years, pay it off for 20 years, whatever, and you'll have a place to retire in. So that's kind of minimalistic, is the way I look at it. And then building wealth on top of that's, um, you know, a different, when you're talking about somebody that's a huge investor. I've seen one of the richest guys. He always says he shouldn't buy a home, but I'm like, I don't understand that guy. His flight, his cost for his airplane pilots are 5 times what I make in a year. So, I mean, I'm not on the same atmosphere as that guy. So, I need a
Grant
place to live.
Cardone.
I need a place for my. Actually, my smoke detector just went off. Did you hear that in the
I,
background?
I did, yeah. So if you have to drop and run, just let us know.
No, no, that's all right. I'm gonna breeze through. I'll breeze through it. I don't even know which one it was in there. So,
It's a battery.
my dog stood straight up, and
Well, the thing here's the thing. Angie's got some great questions here. Do you think prices might stay the same and rates are cut just to get the market going again? I think that the prices, this is my opinion. I'm fairly certain this is correct. That prices adjust based on the market. If there's a lot of people interested, prices go up. If there's no people interested, prices tend to go down. And that's consistent. I'm telling you now that there's, and I said this last week and I'll say it before because it shocks me a little bit. I get notifications when homes get prices cut. And this last couple of years, it really didn't happen very much. It didn't. Most houses were selling pretty close to the list price. There's your sign. If you got to run, if you smell smoke, if but now in this last week, I bet you I'm getting 7 or 8 notifications a day in the areas, my areas of interest, of where they're doing price cuts. And that is where home sellers have been on the market long enough. They're not getting the attention that they want. They're clearly not getting offers, and they're not under contract. And so they're starting to drop prices. And it's, I don't know who teaches how to do price reductions, but it's crazy. I saw a $2 million house that was, they lowered the price $7,000. What? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's about. But here's my point. It is so slow that now that their prices are being reduced at a ridiculous rate. Now, do you think they're claiming there's going to be a couple of more cuts by the Fed this year? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think they're still going to cut, and I hope it drives some I guess more buyers. But that's what I think we're just in a situation where the buyers are just looking for home prices to go down, which is not happening. They're pretty much staying the same. There's several areas around the country that I'm sure are being hit, like we've talked about, but for the most part around here, they're level. They're pretty, pretty flat, and then the rates aren't making enough difference right now to get them off the fence. So they think the rates are going to go down, so they're sitting on the fence. They're hoping prices go down. So you give somebody a reason to sit on the fence, and they're going to be there.
And we talked about that. There's a double-edged sword with if they predict rate cuts in the future, because the human nature is, well, I'm going to wait. I mean, I'm going to wait. And that's what it seems like what people are doing. I don't want to. There's this next article is pretty cool. Are you sure you're safe?
It's just beeping. I don't have a fire. If it's bothering you, I can go figure
No,
out which
no,
one it is.
no. I
The
just
show may be over when I get back. I don't know which one it is.
no. I won't say another word. I apologize. I just don't want
No,
you to be in danger.
no, please do, because it's ridiculous to have one of these things going off in the background. It's just
It's fine. I hardly hear it. So the bottom line is that the market's in a tough place. They're talking about the investments. I'm talking about homeowners, and so at this point, we've just got to wait and see what shakes out. Because here's what's happening: few buyers are out there. I've never seen. I call it beating the bushes. I've never seen more Facebook ads and stuff. People, hey, we're having an open house. Come on by. There's a lot of people beating the bushes trying to get people out there, and that is new construction. That is lenders and mortgage guys are like, I'm getting these texts that are like, geez, leave me alone. If I had somebody, I'd call him Rodney. But there's just a lot of bush beating going on. So it tells you the market's slow. So holding on to that thought for a minute. Are we ready to move on to the next, my favorite thing?
100%.
Here we go. Rodney's Riff.
All right. Let me get this in here where I can see it. Again, apologize.
That's all right.
It's hilarious. Okay. Is this financially responsible? Again, I'll preface this by saying I'm just making an opinion off the information we have here, but we can run through it. Hey, looking into purchase a 620 home, we can get a 5.5 rate and put 20% down. This brings the monthly payment for mortgage around $2,800. It's like $2,816. Property taxes are pretty high in the area. I don't know what that 32 mil is. That may be how they count it or figure out their taxes out there. But anyways, it comes around 10,000 a year, 835 a month. Estimated home insurance 160 a month, HOA 65 a month. Total monthly would be 3860 a month. Monthly with utilities would probably be like 4,200. I really don't consider utilities. Fannie Mae doesn't consider them. We don't put them in DU. They're not on your application. So household income before taxes is 135. We don't really look at after contributions. After tax contributions, you can pay as much or as little tax as you want. We don't look at contributions. We look at your gross pay. He lists his debts there, car payments, 400 much. His question is that too much for us? Sorry if this is the wrong sub for this question. And we jump right in. Well, first, let me go through this a little bit. I was going to jump. I really like that first response there. It says, finally, a GLP-1 plan that gets you and saves you $200. So that was right on the thread. We go straight from is this affordable to a GLP savings? And I think that's a weight loss drug, isn't it?
I didn't know what you were talking.
Plan.
I didn't know what you were talking about. Yeah, I guess
that response is a weight loss plan. So, anyways, so the monthly total, he's 3860, and what mortgage folks looks at is 3860. We take that your monthly mortgage expense with taxes and insurance included, and we divide that in your monthly income, and that comes out to 34.3%. Okay. $400 debt, we do the same thing. You divide that into your monthly income, the monthly debt, and that's 3.5%. So his total is right at 38%, 34 and 3, 38%. Now, this is right on target with Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae's basically starts out and they throw a low-end number of 36% they want your total debt to be. And then it says we'll go up to 45% or a max of 50% if you're using automated underwriting, which 99% of the people in the world do. Only if it's a manual underwrite would you not use your desktop underwriting for this. So, according to Fannie Mae, of course, this is all we get is that what that thread said right there. But according to Fannie Mae, he is well within the approval range of a mortgage. And actually, I would say nationwide, he's on the low side of 34%. If I had to guess, most ratios are higher than the 34%. And that's just how we count it. Now, people, you're going to hear in the thread, you're going to, oh, well, your take home's 50% or this is that. People use a lot of different calculations for themselves, but that really doesn't, when I'm comparing it, I use Fannie Mae stuff because that's how it's going to be ran through the computer. And that's the best we can say whether we can get them approved or not. Now, obviously what I can approve them for, what they can afford, may be two different things. So they're going to have to figure that out, as before they buy it. Like, can you afford the payment? So, but anyways, I would say that the thing in the thing here says basically they're in a high cost area, or he says taxes are pretty high in the area. It makes me think that it's a high cost area. So if you're a $620,000 home, I'm thinking his rent's going to be pretty expensive. Later on in the thread there, he does talk about his rent, and his rent is $2,800. So now, if I know his rent's $2,800, this is a high cost area that he lives in, and he can get it all in for $3,860, and his ratios are below Fannie Mae's, Fannie Mae's going to take this loan all day long. Now, does it fit in his budget? That's for him to answer, but we would approve this loan with ease. Um, so let's jump down into the comments and see what they have to say here. Double trade right off the bat, or treble, double treble.
Got it.
All right. 54% of your take home on a mortgage is too high. My take home is the same as yours, and I would never feel comfortable with that. Congratulations. You know, that's his opinion. That's fine. But he goes to his own calculations of how he figures up how it's comfortable for him. Um, and here the original thread at Zito X, yeah, that's how I'm leaning too. I do think our income is going to go up in the next year, is why I'm even considering this, but that's not something worth betting on. Okay. Um, Typically, what I've seen is when people have a monthly payment 5 years down the road or several years down the road, that payment is very affordable to them. It tends to, your payment seems less over time for most people, if that makes sense. Bifflet or something. Income might go up, taxes, insurance, and utilities definitely will. Um, Here's the next one there. Do you have a budget? Knowing what expenses you have now will give you an idea of what you can afford. You'll have to change your spending drastically. Keep in mind he's paying $3,800 now, so really he's spending $1,000 more a month
Mm-hmm.
to own his home. Um, so and then this person keeps talking about utilities increase in summer and winter, and if you buy, at least you have to live in the house before thinking of renovating or adding to the house. Well, that's not something I think about immediately unless I'm buying a fixer upper. Smart, rely on money you don't even have yet. So there's a lot of hate. A lot of people saying that this is not a good deal, but this is actually a pretty good deal. What I see most people. Here's another. We just closed on a house about the same price with a mortgage roughly the same as what you presented, including HOA and very high property taxes factored in. We make about $235 household income with no car payments or other debt, and we're even a little anxious about adjusting to a new budget. Okay, so they're making $20,000 a month gross. If they're making $235 a year, and they're worried about say $3,900 divided into 20,000. So that's only 19.5% of their gross income. That's an extremely. I don't understand how you'd be nervous about anything. So
Man.
I'm over here also trying to figure out how TF, you are so lucky to have 7,200 take home per month from. Okay, so this person is worrying about how much they're taking home and how much their taxes are, and wonder if they have, they're claiming too many kids or something.
Jeez.
Too much, buddy. Be careful. You'll end up house poor. Irresponsible is too strong of a word. Over leverage is more accurate. But in some areas of the country, housing is just very expensive, including renting. After 2 to 3, her last sentence is, after 2 to 3 years, you'll be in better financial shape, though probably still over leveraged. I just don't agree. I haven't seen a single thread in here, that basically says, and they wouldn't support it or wouldn't suggest it. But what's crazy is this is a very good back end ratio for the people I see. And a lot of the people, I've seen, 5%, 2% crazy, really low debt stuff. But for the most part, this is below average. So it's I'm not sure. I just don't think people give very good advice sometimes. I mean, you can rent for 20, think about this, you can rent for 2,800. Now, I'm not, this is totally discounting a 20% down payment, and I don't mean to do that lightly, right? But
Mm.
overall, they'd be going from 2,800 in rent to 3,900 or 3,860 in owning. uh I mean, that's $2,800 is 100% interest. So I mean, I don't, it's not even a close one for me. But yet, everybody on the internet seemed to disagree with that. So,
Hmm.
but what's important would be what the buyer said. Like, if I first question I asked them was like, "Hey, how's that payment to you? Like, can you make that payment?" And if they're like, "Yeah, I mean, I make 2,800 now, it's no problem." Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
then they would need to do it. But if they're like, "Oh, I don't know," you don't need to get into a house not knowing, or something like that. Um, but you know, and to wrap up here, I did go to Google, and I just typed in Fannie Mae debt to income ratio chart and AI overview. You know how the AI comes up. The first sentence says Fannie Mae has a maximum debt to income ratio of 50% for loans underwritten through its automated system, DU. There you go. Up to 50%. I wouldn't recommend somebody going that high, but that's totally, my job is to run it through the system and to see if the system approves it, because that's what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac determined as far as approval goes, right? So if Fannie Mae and them approve it, we verify it and send it all in. It's all perfect. So that's kind of what we look at. But I think the guy would. I think if they could afford the payment, they would definitely be approved for it. As
Yeah,
long as they were comfortable with it. That's the whole thing.
that's the whole thing.
And that's the Rodney's Riff and the reality check all in the same story.
Oops, sorry. I thought that was really interesting. And what's interesting to me when we're looking at the bigger picture, that was really good, Ronnie. That gets better every week. When the bigger picture is, the guy asked a good question, and it's a fair question. And again, with that one guy kind of being snippy, I don't see that very much on Reddit. Sometimes you do, but not in here. And I was a little disappointed he's being snippy about it. But it goes to show you, there's one guy asking a good question, and if he talked to you, a lender, he'd be on solid footing. Now, what he decided to do, move forward or not, is one thing. But you've got 10 or 12 people that are making comments that would be hard nosed because they don't know any better.
Yeah.
They're
I
making
mean,
bad decisions.
I would challenge those people to do their financials and to see if all those people commenting, this guy only had one $400 debt to his name, and that's just, that's good for for a couple, or what he said, 135 annually. I mean, that's below. I mean, that's one debt. And he might pay that off and not have anything. But I would challenge everybody in that thread. I would be willing to bet that guy's in better position than the people giving him the advice of no.
Yeah. And you see that one comment in there. It said, the woman said, my husband makes $150,000 a year and nets $5,000 a month. What? Wait a minute.
Well, I
Wait.
mean, he could be doing like a 50, a plus 55 retirement catch up, and maxing out his 401k, and, paying vacation plans, paying in all that medical stuff you can invest in. I mean, you can get
Hmm.
with a lot of companies that offer a lot of those options, man, you can really, you can buy insurance and all kinds of stuff. I mean, so yeah, your paycheck would be a lot lower, but that's real. we don't calculate all that other spending, and how you do your taxes.
I just thought that was a bit extreme. $1.50
Yeah.
and 5. Something's not good. But again, my point is, and for anybody that watches this, and there's a bunch of you that do watch this after the fact. If you're thinking about doing something, talk to somebody that knows. Again, asking questions on Reddit, that's perfectly fine. But also be open to the professionals. I want to make a real quick example about people that aren't in the business making their own decisions, and it's along the lines of about what we're just talking about. People making decisions not being held by a professional. So there's a person that I know, no names, no areas. They're selling their house. Perfectly fine. They're doing it for sale by owner. Perfectly fine. Did they ever ask any questions? The answer to that is no. And the way that I know that is it is in a neighborhood. I can't be specific. The house is easily $60,000 over the comps in the neighborhood. And the reason I mention that is with a market as slow as it is, they don't have a chance. And the thing is, they don't know that yet. That's my point. She doesn't know that it's $60,000 over, probably 100. And it's going to be, and they've bought another house in the meantime, and it's going to be kind of a tough awakening. And the reason I say it, because Rodney has said this a number of times over the years we've been doing this. If you got mortgage questions, call him, ask him the questions. He's not going to try to sell you anything. If you got real estate questions, call me. We'll talk about it. I'll try to explain what I know. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. We're just here to help. And that's just an example of somebody that's not getting the help that perhaps would have helped them in the long run. I don't know if it makes any sense or not, but I thought it was interesting.
It does, but if you're, the whole thing is somebody, trying to for sale by owner, which I'm a huge fan of that. Facetious. I'm being kidding. I'm not a huge fan.
I get it. I get it.
It's extremely difficult to work with. But when they're doing that, like I would feel bad about, like, say, in a situation, I'm not in this business, me and your friends, I would feel bad if I knew I was going to list it, to call you and ask you for advice and knowing I was going to, it'd be like, hey, I need to eat this hamburger I'm going to make over here. I'm making it, I'm choosing not to use a professional. So, I need to eat this hamburger. I'd feel terrible. I'd be like, well, I mean, I feel like, you need to charge me for the phone call or something. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just,
I do.
That's a weird situation. Would be for me.
It is, and in this kind of a situation, if they called and said, "What do you think?" after, because there's around here, there's a realtor. If you swing a dead cat, you hit 6 of us. I mean, it's just we're thick around here, and it would be very difficult to if somebody called and said, "What do you think?" That's where I would ask the question: do you want me to be nice, or do you want me to be honest? Because that's going to be that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. Not that I am not judging them, I'm not, but it just, when you can see down the road, and that's going to be a hurtful thing, it's tough to watch. Anyway, let that go.
Yeah, that's, you got a big heart, because in my opinion, it's you've just got, it's a huge transaction. You just need to have a professional involved. I say that unless you're a professional, unless you know what's going on, unless you're so good with the market that you know what I'm saying. I mean, but that's typically not the case. It's typically done for financial purposes, and they're a lot of times they're the people that need it the most.
Yeah, and she does, but they'll trust me, they're going to learn a lesson. So we're going to move on to this, and we're going to be jumping out of here early today, and so I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up. But I'm going to do this one last article that I thought dovetails beautifully with a couple of things. The first article we talked about on shortage of supply, or what the market's doing currently, and with talking about working with professionals. So it looks like I've got the entire thing highlighted, which I do. Is a great article, but it'll go really fast. So the housing crisis may not be what you think. I thought this was eye-opening. I really did. Earlier this year, the administration floated the idea of declaring a housing emergency. We've talked a little bit about that. In economics, it's the author, his name is Eakin, broadly agreed. For years, there'd been extremely high occupancy rates in the rental sector, sorry about the rental stuff, and very little inventory in the owner-occupied market. There was a good question as to what exactly the federal government could do to spur more shelter building. And we talked about that. Can they do tax benefits or something? But the president floated the idea of using Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to get big home builders going, although he did not specify exactly how, and probably credits and stuff. Didn't you say, Rodney? Wouldn't there be a method to
I mean,
help
yeah,
them?
I mean, you know, the quickly when while you're in this article, but a builder is going to have construction cost, interest, uh, while this thing just sits on the ground, you know, while it's being built, and then while it's not being sold, as far as because the market's slow. So yeah, I don't know unless I don't know how they compensate a builder to say, hey, go do this in a futile market, right? I mean, so
I saw an ad this morning from a new builder, great builder, too, beautiful houses. It was a house that was close to 3 million. They lowered the price $500,000. Tell me that guy isn't serious.
that's
That's a
serious.
price drop.
Yeah,
That didn't sound so. To go on, that didn't sound very promising. The economics profession tended to focus on things that raised construction costs. Those builders, they get. It's amazing that the expense that they burden. It's amazing. Shortage of labor, tariffs, and inputs to construction, or made land scarce and expensive, like local zoning laws. We're talking about that all over the place, trying to get more density so you can build more houses and the infrastructure take a hit. Other than not making things worse, there did not appear to be an obvious role for the federal government. I thought that was interesting. But here's the thought. Here, however, is the shocking new reality. For the first time in decades, the housing crisis may be low demand, not low supply. And when you think about that, I I tend to I tend to agree with that, because what's the thing that we kept leaning on, and I don't even know that the rest of the article's very important relative to the conversation. In the past, we would talk about pent up demand. My question to you, Rodney, is do you think, remember 2 years ago, we talked about pent up demand like it was a loaded spring getting ready to break. Do you feel like that pent up demand is as strong these days?
I for some reason I don't feel like it's that loaded spring anymore, but I feel like it's still maybe a smaller spring. I don't think and that's just some crazy feeling, my own personal opinion, and
Me
that's
too.
only because of I think the job market has weakened some, and I think people are a little bit more, not concerned about their jobs, but just not like you know you can go out and find another job making 250,000 a year, those I think that's what I'm thinking right now, is that the job market's not as crazy good as it was, especially when all the craziness was happening. But now it's still definitely going to be there, because we're not there yet, right? I mean, that unloaded spring was supposed to hit at 5.75,
Yeah.
and what we've seen right now is, while it's getting there, we've seen more refinances come off the thing, of people that were 7.5. So yeah, the loaded spring I think is still there, but maybe not as big of a spring as I thought a while
Yeah.
ago.
I couldn't agree more in this final thought, and then we'll start to wrap up. And it says, how did this happen? Why is it that builders are sitting with a lot of unsold inventory which they are. I can testify to that. First, there is the price of housing. After years of shelter inflation, there is just not yet enough softening of the house prices to entice buyers vis-a-vis the $500,000 price drop. That's a signal. It says time will solve this problem, but not quickly. Couldn't agree more with the way that the Fed's going to be responding. People have to see what they're going to do long term. You know, if they get into the spring and they say we're going to have 5 more cuts, get ready to wait. You know, because they're going to wait for the 5 cuts. You know, it just I think that the point of this article and what I'm trying to say, and if it's a reality check, kind of is for me a little bit, because I'm seeing it everywhere now. It is everywhere that the buyers are not coming out. Open houses are dead. Contracts are not being written like they used to. We're being flooded with people's, please come see my house. You know, that's how they do it behind the scenes. You know, it's just that the the frantic nature that used to be home buying, that's not the environment right now. And I just think people are, what did you use the word earlier? I think it was in an article. People are a bit discouraged, a little worn out, you know? So this is a challenging time, and we're headed into the holiday season, which gives everybody a reason to sit back and just, you know,
expected rate cuts. Everybody in the world, you know, is, if you go and ask them, be like, or has your house increased or declined? They're probably think, oh, it's had to decline, you know. You know, so they think you know, but that's really not the case. They may, you know, because everybody thinks the house prices should be going backwards, but they're not. You know, that's the, you know, till these rates make it affordable again, it's going to be, you know.
Yeah. And in the meantime, these price cuts are sending signals to everybody, come in more reasonable. So, hey, you know what? It's been a great show. Rodney's riff is just,
Well, thank you.
It's excellent. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up and get out of here?
Have a great week.
You too. I'll see you next Tuesday. Angie, thank you so much. We just love you to death. So we're out of here. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.